As you can see, I will today talk about the work of Ukrainian stenographer Vasilija Uljaniščeva, who worked in Slovene theaters between 1930 and 1934. We actually never did the chronology of his performances, his scenographies. We always look at the performances which the directors did it, but never never put it together. So I did that. With, of course, my question, was it him or was it just the ideas of directors with which he cooperated? So now I will start talk about his 4 last years, which he which he worked in Ljubljana. He created sets for 55 performances, of which only 29 are documented with visual material, photographs and set designs. Most of his creations were for Ljubljana's Opera House, others for Drama Theater. Over the course of the 4 years, he worked with many directors, but most frequently with Osip Šest, Bratko Krift and Ferdo Dilak. Uljaniščev was educated as a chemist and a painter, and then gained experience as a scenographer cooperating with Russian avant-garde director Odmevi. He gained further experience as a scenographer at the Moscow Art Theater Med before the First World War. So, what was his contribution to the modernization of Slovenian scenography? Although we can only talk about the continuity of his work for Ljubljana's theater from 1930 onwards, we can find 2 examples of his early work from 1922 in the Slogi Museum collection. The 2 artifacts are signed and dated, so we can undoubtedly attribute it to his early opus. He also wrote the title of the play. However, the problem is that there was no new performance of Gorky's Lower Depths in our theater in 1921. It was performed a year earlier. In fact, the only parallel we can find in that year is the performance of Lower Depths staged at the National Theater in Ljubljana by visiting a group of Russian actors from the Moscow Art Theater on March the 2nd. Unfortunately, the theater program lists the name of, as you can see, scenographer Grimslavsky, not Uljaniščev. And we know for a fact from the one record of writer Pavel Gulja that Grimslavsky did not come to Ljubljana when the Russians performed that play. On the other hand, we also have data from the Old Slovenian Biographical Lexicon, and I quote, that Uljaniščev immigrated to Yugoslavia in 1920 and worked as a carpenter at the theater in Sarajevo, Bosnia, until 1922, then as a stenographer at the National Theater in Zagreb, Croatia, and then National Theater in Novi Sad, Osijek. And also that he also created scenery for Split before Croatia, before he came to Ljubljana in 1930. So no data that he would came first in Ljubljana. That is why it is particularly interesting that his stage designs are very similar to the photograph of the Russian Gorky's performance from March 1921. This raises more questions than answers. Could it be that Uljaniščev created the scenery instead of Grimslavsky? There are certainly similarities between his stage draft and the stage set in the photography. Therefore, this case is more than worthy of further analysis. At this point, however, we can conclude that it is clear that Uljaniščev was well acquainted with the new scenography of the Moscow Art Theater and that he transferred the new aesthetic of Russian contemporary stage design to Yugoslavia. As we already mentioned, it is more likely that Uljaniščeva created scenery for the National Theatre in Ljubljana for the first time in October 1930, when he worked with director Osip Šest on Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. The theatre flyer mentions that that scenography was designed according to the Uljaniščeva stage drafts, and also that his idea for costumes were created in the theatre costume workshop. It was also well known, a characteristic of director Osip Šest, who loved to create the idea for a set by himself and then let the scenographer help him to transfer it to the stage. This time, Šest, he wanted to produce classic scenography popular in Shakespeare's time. Therefore, this was more than welcome for the new set designer Uljaniščeva, as he first had to familiarize himself with the condition, size and equipment of our stage. From the photographs of the performance, it is evident that they used classical Italian box stage with flags. A panel with an image of the city of Athens set at the back of the stage also, that it's seen here. It's just this photograph. And just because of the frequent lack of financial resources for the new stage equipment, there was a lot of similar Uljaniščeva scenography for the National Theatre and Opera in Ljubljana during his last 4 working years. But even when he had to work with old flags, Uljaniščeva created interesting and modern versions of the scenery. When he designed scenography for Mednarodni, he decided to turn the flags around so that the audience would have to look at their backs. The scenery was also lower than the actors, and in fact they were used more as a barrier than the walls of the interior. That's also interesting because our most famous avant-garde scenographer, August Černikov, did that a few years earlier in Gorizia with Amfiteatrov, but then there with director Ferdo Delak did a step further. They went and get the flags into the auditorium between the audience. So I think about this scenography as one step from the amateur theater of avant-garde, of course, to the professional theaters first, of course, in Ljubljana. Whenever he could, Uljaniščeva turned towards avant-garde concepts. Already in his first scenography for Ljubljan's opera house, Prince Igor, he indicated the modern scenographic canon. Until his death, he remained stylistically committed to Russian aesthetic. He also bid farewell to the style he showed in his first scenography on our stage. He designed his last for Mussorgsky Kovanščina, in which he shows the link towards Russian scenography of the early 20th century. It was precisely the new avant-garde approaches of Uljaniščeva's scenography that impressed young director Bratko Krift, and together they created the scenography for the avant-garde adaptation of Odran's operetta La Mascotte at Ljubljan's Opera House. In the case of that operetta, Kraft modernized the libretto and converted it from a satire into a contemporary commedia dell'arte. The chorus entered the stage from all sides where the ballet dancer performed dancing girls, something never seen before on a stage in Slovenia. In designing this avant-garde adaptation, they adopted the set designs and costumes to match the current political situation. The corps de ballet first appeared as hunters and then as soldiers wearing gas masks. The singers wore caricature masks. One of them even looked like Mussolini. A ladder was hanged and ballerinas performed circus acrobatics on it. one of the dancers also caricatured Charlie Chaplin. Uljaniščev's set design illustrated this. It was simple and symmetrical, with a rotating circle made from flats at the back of the stage and a ladder intended for the acrobatic part. But it was the most modern set that the Ljubljana Opera has ever presented. In fact, it seems, in this time of course, in fact it seems that Uljaniščev's scenography was based on the set designs for Magnificent Carcload from 1922, which was, of course, main work of the Russian set designer Popova. We can see similarities in the construction of the great spinning wheel. And there are also some similarities with the symmetrical arrangement of stage elements, the staircase, and the arrangement of the actors in a pyramid with Alexandra Ekster's scenography of Anensky Famira Kifarit from 1916. La Mascotte combined elements of several Russian sets and features a large spinning wheel. At the same time, it was the first performance on our professional stages that transferred the type of mass theater from the workers' stage, and the first to realize the caricature of Mussolini on the Ljubljana stage on this side of the Rapallo border. It was also the first performance to use sports elements such as acrobatics, dancing, climbing ladder, and also our first avant-garde performance, which some years later was performed in the open air in Tivoli Park in Ljubljana. From this successful performance, Uljaniščeva and Kraft created other avant-garde opera pieces, including Massenet, Werther, Bizet, Carmen, and Benatsky's The Three Musketeers. Influenced by silent film, the operetta The Three Musketeers used projections with introductory captions. At the same time, Uljaniščeva and director Delak performed the adaptation of Offenbach's Robinson Crusoe as Robinsonada. The set was minimally constructed using numerous projections and lighting effects. A sun was projected onto a screen while sun rays danced on the floor. Unfortunately, only descriptions have survived, such as this one from the director himself in the theatrical program. I quote, "The decorations is indicated for the audience, but the stage is always free for the actors." That was the real reason why they used the projections in that performance. But Uljaniščeva was happiest when he could create scenography for Russian theater plays. For a Rimsky-Korsakov performance, he chose the template for the scenography opus by Russian set designer Natalia Goncharova. He based his scenography on her colorful sketches for Rimsky-Korsakov's The Golden Rooster. Its white colors and Russian national patterns echoed in Uljaniščeva's creation. He also, that's the second connection with the set designs. Uljaniščeva also introduced avant-garde scenography ideas to the Ljubljana National Theatre drama. The main idea for the set of Nestor's play was an interesting simultaneous scene comprised of an open fronted box with several floors and rooms where the actors placed at the same time in different rooms. With this set design, he probably leaned on performances of German director Erwin Piscator, or rather on the scenography from 1927 for his staging of Thaler's Hoppla wir leben, or We Live. However, Uljaniščeva produced the most avant-garde set design for a ballet performance, where he was left completely free from director's concept. A year earlier, the ballet The Ladies' Jester was premiered at the Opera Comique in Paris, directed and scenographed by ballet dancer Václav Vlček, who also performed in Slovenia. In Uljaniščev's scenography for the Slovene premiere, a checkerboard floor set the stage for ballet dancer in costumes that imitated those of Schlemmer's triadic ballet. That's a comparison. The constructivist multicolored plans were illuminated by varied spotlight beams also. Uljaniščev's last scenography in Ljubljana was for the performance of Mussorgskih Hovanščina, which he made entirely in the Russian style. During this time, he was already ill, so he conceived his last set designs whilst in Golnik Hospital. His idea was transferred to the stage by the theater workshop. His last note to the director of this opera, Cyril de Bevec, was written on 21 August 1934. He informed him that he had sent him 32 sketches, plans and floor plans in the post addressed to the opera manager Mirko Polic. They don't exist today. He died just days before its premiere on 19 September 1934. We can conclude that many of Uljaniščev's scenographic ideas were based on scenic templates that he knew from the European and especially Russian scenographic milieu. His stage creations, which he could set up anew and independently of the old scenery theater holdings, were famous for their innovative scenic installations, including spatially diverse installations, which still represent groundbreaking innovations for Slovenian theater history. So, thank you.